Hi everyone, quick disclaimer before the video begins. I just want to say I'm using traditional grip right here. Not because I believe it's the only grip or the right grip or the best grip, but because I would just want to give everyone a fair chance, right? If you use match, just copy what I do for my right hand over for my left. But if you use traditional, obviously you can't do that, so that's why I'm doing that. Anyways, on with the video, right? We're going to start out with a set of 8s, okay? Play 8 notes on each hand. And what I want you to notice is that the last note of each hand is a downstroke, okay? Like that. What I need you also to pay attention to is that the sound of the downstroke, you're playing with the same velocity as your full stroke, right? There should be no change in sound if I'm playing it correctly, or if you're playing it correctly at home. So let's try this. Right, if you're playing it incorrectly, it might sound like this. Now, why is that bad? First of all, hopefully it should be obvious that we're making an inconsistent sound, right? If you play 7 of those notes the same, and have your eighth note louder than the last one, because you're using your fingers to articulate it, or you're just adding excess velocity with your wrist, that's obviously bad, right? You want all of these notes to sound the same if you're playing them the same height. And that kind of inconsistent sound problem kind of comes back also to relaxation too. So many things in drumming can be talked about by means of relaxation. You always want to be relaxed. And if you slam your downstrokes like this by using your fingers like this in this motion, and traditional, by the way, sorry, you're opening your hand up like this and clamping it back down. If you do that, you aren't as relaxed as possible. Now, why is that? That's because you're using excess muscle effort, right? If I just take my hand, right, and I just lift it up, doing nothing to the inside of my hand, keeping it the same as my set position, just drop my hand. That's all you need to do. You don't need excess velocity by using your fingers or by using your wrist, right? Well, yes, use your wrist, but don't add excess velocity with your wrist. Because really, the weight of your hand is enough to stop the stick low. Even if I take off my fulcrum, right? Just the weight of my hand alone is enough to stop the stick low, right? You don't need to add anything extra. And if you are adding anything extra, that's just making you work harder, right? The same logic applies to full strokes. You're just, for a full stroke, your hand is open and you're utilizing the rebound. You shouldn't be working on making the stick come back. You shouldn't have to pull it up. Same thing for a downstroke, right? You should not have to work at all. You should just take your hand, drop it, right? If you take your stick out of your hands, you just put on a practice pad, lift it, drop it, lift it, drop it. You're seeing how gravity, just pulling your hand down, you're just letting your hand fall naturally, relaxedly, right? That's the same exact motion we want here. We just want to lift, drop, right? We don't need to add anything because, once again, I'm just repeating this so many times so you get it, but if you add velocity, you're just doing more work than you need to. You can just let your hand drop and let the weight of your hand control the stick. You can just tell your hand to stop. That stick is going to follow it, right? The last thing we want to talk about here, the last reason that this is going to be bad, is because if you're adding all of this extra force, it's going to create an inconsistent sound. It's going to not be relaxed, but it's also going to make your stick stop super low, right? You're going to stop in this set position. Now, why is that bad? Let's say I have to play some taps afterwards. If I don't want to sound super brittle, like this, right, with my taps in my set position, if I want my taps to be a little louder, let's say I want to play notes up here, you have to rebound your downstroke. And I know that's kind of weird to say, but think about it, right? Like if I take my fulcrum off again, if I take my top 2 fingers off again, you'll see that the space in my hand allows this downstroke to rebound. And really, the way you should be thinking about it is if I stop the stick super low, if I squeeze like this, if I slam my downstrokes, then I have to lift my hand up. I have to put in more effort, once again, to get your stick up to a proper tap height. And obviously that's bad, right? You aren't as relaxed as you can be, right? We need to use the rebound, right? If you're playing a nice, light, relaxed downstroke, then the stick should, if you allow it to, rebound up, right? You can, right? But if you're playing a slammy downstroke, if you're slamming, there's no way that stick is going to rebound back up. You're going to have to do all of the work, right? And we're trying to be as lazy as possible as drummers, right? Don't do the work. Just let your hand relax, fall down. Now, how do you work on this? I'm saying, oh, rebound your downstrokes. That's kind of a hard thing to do, right? I get that. So we're going to be doing an accent relaxer exercise. So the way this is going to work is the first bar is going to be just full strokes, double stops. Full strokes, double stops. And double stops are just playing both your hands at the same time. And you're just going to play that as eighth notes for a bar. Now our next bar, this is where we change it. We're going to make the first note a full stroke, and then we're going to lower the upbeat's height. So you're going to go loud, slightly softer, loud, slightly softer, loud, slightly softer, loud, slightly softer. Or in proper terms, you'd be going like forte, mezzo, forte, forte, mezzo, forte, forte, mezzo, forte, forte, mezzo, forte. So notice that your hand, despite the fact that you aren't playing all the notes at the same height, despite the fact that you're doing this, you're still rebounding, right? You aren't like doing all the work. You're just letting the stick naturally decay. And when you think about the mechanics, right, the difference between and just changing that height, all you're doing in your hand is you're just closing it slightly. If you're full stroke, if you're like this, then you might just close it a little bit to help control the stick a bit more. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to keep decreasing the height, and eventually you're going to get to your accent tap, your downstroke. And what's going to happen is your hand is going to be just as closed as your set position is. And that's how we get that drop relaxed, but also that rebound, right? If you work on feeling the downstroke just as rebounded as your full strokes and your like natural decay, then you're going to get that kind of motion where you're allowing your tap stroke to rebound. So we're going to work through this exercise. So basically, as a reminder, full strokes, and then every bar after that, we're going to decrease the height a little bit of our upbeat notes. And eventually we're going to get to a point where we're playing our upbeat notes at tap height, and we're going to get an accent tap. Okay? Ready? Hopefully you can join along with me at home. Okay, so now what if we want to do the opposite? Let's start with our taps, and this is called a tap relaxer. You start with your taps, and every upbeat, we're going to increase the dynamic. So you're going to start like this. Bar of taps, double stopped. And then each upbeat, you're going to increase a little dynamic. And you're going to keep doing that until you get to your full height. And one thing we can do here is we can loop these exercises together. We're going to start just by playing the tap relaxer first. And the goal of this is that hopefully if you start with your set position on the taps, you shouldn't be changing too much when you play your downstroke, right? It should feel the same in your hands. One other thing I want to caution you on is that I know I'm saying, like, keep your hand like your set position. Keep your hand a bit closed, right? And that's good for your downstrokes. You should keep your hand closed. That does not mean squeeze, right? Closed is just set position. Squeezing is when you're adding excess tension. More tension than you need, like this. Obviously, that's bad, right? Tension is the enemy. We want to be nice and relaxed. And hopefully let the weight of our hand stop the stroke rather than the, like, force of the stroke, okay? So, let's try this tap relaxer. We're just going to increase the height every upbeat. Okay, cool. Now, we're going to loop them together. So the way it's going to work is after the final notes of the accent relaxer, you're going to have 2 taps, and that second tap is the start of your tap relaxer. And the way you loop tap into accent is you go, that last note of your tap relaxer is the same height and the same stroke as the starting note of your accent relaxer. And this looping this exercise actually provides a really great way to approach this, because it'll test you on whether your downstrokes are the same really as your full strokes. Because when you're doing your downstrokes in your tap relaxer, you have no frame of reference for your full strokes, right? So when you go back to playing full strokes like this, your full stroke should be the same volume, the same velocity as your downstroke in the tap relaxer. And if they aren't, that means you're either playing your downstrokes super softly, like you're trying to pull back too much. Like I can't even do it. Like that maybe. And that's also excess muscle effort, right? You just need to let your hand drop like this. Or you're putting too much effort once again, which is what we're trying to avoid. So that's your test really. If you're... that blending of that looping should sound seamless. Okay, there should be no change. You shouldn't be able to tell when one exercise ends by the velocities, okay? So let's just try looping this whole exercise. I'm going to do it twice through. Here it goes. Okay, so that is your accent relaxer and tap relaxer, and that's going to help you, in summary, basically feel the rebound of your downstroke, the feeling of that rebounded downstroke. That's the same velocity as the full stroke and also has the same level of rebound. Well, not same level of rebound, but the same hand feel as your full stroke, so that when you play your downstroke, you can rebound to the proper height rather than slamming and being forced to stay in your set position. So the last thing I want to mention here, just before we wrap up, is this kind of 3-note cycle where you might ask, okay, so what if I play a full stroke into a downstroke into a tap, right? What if I do this? Don't you have to open your hand for your full stroke to play it, and then you have to close your hand for the downstroke? How do you avoid squeezing? And the way you answer this question is basically by saying, okay, instead of thinking, how do I squeeze less on the downstroke, think, how do I open less on the full stroke, right? How do I play from the back of my hand and use my wrist rather than playing focusing on the front of your hand, trying to squeeze your fulcrum, play a fulcrum finger motion, and then you have to slam it shut. Instead, think about just your wrist motion, and that the stick really should, if you're playing from the back of your hand, it should open up naturally when you play your full stroke, and that's just enough that you can close your hand for the downstroke, right? And hopefully you'll notice too that this downstroke that you do after the full stroke, if you do a 3-note cycle, it's a passive motion, right? I'm not thinking about closing my hand for the downstroke. And I know it's a kind of weird thing to say, just say don't think about it. Obviously you need to think about it enough that the volume is the same, right? You don't want to do, right? But you don't want to think about it so much that you end up doing that squeezing, right? You just want to let it happen, and you're letting it happen basically by just not opening your hand as much. And I'll show that in my left hand as well. Right, you're just, the bottom 2 fingers, they can come off for the full stroke, but then just let them come back on, right? You shouldn't be doing this, right? Just curling them in all the way. They should have a little bit of space to open up for that full stroke. But it shouldn't be so much that you have to like squeeze to get back down, right? It should just be a little bit. And sometimes I even see people saying don't open your bottom two fingers. You can just, assuming you're slow enough, right? But basically the bottom line here, that aside, is that your hand should be opening up just enough to rebound, but not so much that you have to slam back down for your downstroke. You should just be opening as little as possible, but just enough so that you rebound. And that kind of reminds me, too, of like this kind of final point, which is that I think I mentioned it before, but you don't need to squeeze, right? You don't need the stroke to be just like this super static and rigid, right? Because we're rebounding our downstroke, it's okay if the stick moves a little in your hand. That's fine. You shouldn't be squeezing to avoid that, right? We just don't want the stick to move a lot. We want to keep the stick's motion to a minimum. But that does not give us an excuse to squeeze, okay? So we should be just following the natural movement of the stick and using our hand to make the natural motion of the stick be like, hey, I want to stay down here, because the weight of the hand is so much so that the stick isn't able to rebound back up unless you need to rebound your downstroke, which is when you let the stick rebound back up a bit and you just follow it. You play nice and relaxed rebounded downstrokes so that you can play your taps afterwards. So kind of summarizing everything here, basically, you need to just keep your set position, lift it up, drop it, lift it up, drop it, lift it up, drop it, right? That's how you play a relaxed downstroke. You don't want to squeeze, you don't want to slam your downstrokes at excess velocity. That's bad, because then you're not going to be relaxed, you're going to create an inconsistent sound, and your downstrokes aren't going to be rebounded, so you could go like this, right? You can't do that if you're trying to slam every note, right? So I hope this video is informative. I hope you found it helpful. I hope that this accent top relaxer gives you like something to practice now to help relax your downstrokes. And I wish you all the best of luck with practicing.